Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're going to kind of recap this information on the Middle Ages. So let's go ahead and take a look at this a little bit more in depth. The Middle Ages, when we're talking about the Middle Ages themselves, they actually expand from about 500 AD, roughly, basically the fall of the Roman Empire, all the way up to about 1400 AD, and that could kind of shift around depending on which historian you're taking into account here. Roughly around 1400 AD is where we have the end of the Middle Ages, which is technically the more common date is about 1453, and we'll get into that kind of at the end of this little series here. All right, so we have the fall of Rome in 476. With the fall of Rome, right, we have these Germanic invasions, and these invasions actually caused a lot of changes in not only the economy but the system of government that's ruling Europe, the cultures that are throughout Europe. And not only that, right, we have trade that is being disrupted. We have a lot of migrations out of cities and into rural areas, so out into the countryside. A lot of people are taking refuge in away from cities where the invasions are occurring. And you now have people that are a lot more focused on survival rather than intellectual things. So there's very little reading and writing. There's really no common language, and around a little bit later on, but around this time we start to see new languages start to emerge. Individual, more local languages like Italian and French and Spanish and German and English and Dutch and Swedish and whatever other languages. So when we kind of begin our story here with the Franks, so the Franks actually spread their power through modern day France, which was then Gaul, and under Clovis, or the Frankish leader Clovis, and his successors. Later on, we have Charlemagne. Right, they actually create ties with the Catholic Church, and this is actually quite important for the development of their kingdoms. So both the Church and the Franks gain more power with this relationship between the two of them. And this is especially going to help out the church a little bit later on down the road. So we get into this new societal structure known as feudalism. And during this time, earlier on, right, we have Europe that actually needs defense against invasions from multiple groups of people, such as the Vikings from northern Europe, up from in Scandinavia, which is modern day Norway and Sweden. And then you also have uh, the Muslims, which are coming up from North Africa and sweeping into Spain and Portugal. And then included in that, you also have the Magyars, which are this group of invaders from Eastern Europe. So you have a lot of these invasions that are occurring in Europe from multiple different directions. And this new social order actually develops because of this, and it's known as feudalism. Feudalism is kind of basically developing a system that can defend itself. So you have these lords or kings, these people that are in charge, right, who are above another class, which are typically noblemen. So they're specific people that are that own parts of your plot of land, and then you have the church officials, and then under them you have the knights, which are the people that are actually doing the protection, right, defending your territory for you. And then you have people that are working the farms, working the lands, doing the work for you. Those are the peasants and the serfs. And all of these people are kind of combined into what's known as a lord's manor. So the Lord's Manor is just his estate. It's an area that houses everybody. It's specifically surrounded by a village, or incorporated a village into the territory, or you could even have multiple villages um, within its territory. And then you have the Lord would live in his manor, the main manor itself. Um, then you would have other noblemen and church officials, possibly if there's a church in the area, or even other noblemen in the area. You would have housing and protection for them. The people that are again doing the protection are the knights, and then you have the peasants and the serfs that are serving you. And generally, the way that this was structured is that you have the lords that are providing housing, protection, and food for all of the people under him. And in return, they have the people that are doing the work, right? The peasants and the serfs that are maintaining the estates and caring for the crops, and that allows the economy itself to grow, right? Because now if they have a surplus of food, they're able to trade with their neighbor, and gain some money, and then that money can go towards paying the knights, or giving, buying more land so they can give the knights land, and paying the church and doing whatever else they need to do. So in the system of feudalism, you have knights, right? These are protectors, the protectors of the Lord's Manor, and the knights typically follow this code of chivalry, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But these are warriors on horseback, and shortly after the fall of Rome, we start to see stirrups and saddles and things that are really kind of changing warfare itself. So now you have this ability to go out um, and fight more successfully on horseback. So now you have obviously the only people that could afford horses, and not only that, but very protective armor, and the equipment needed to actually go to war. So swords and spears and crossbows and whatever else they're using. It's going to take a little bit of money. So you typically have kind of these noble families that have a little bit of money that they're able to, send their son off to school, to this night school, and they're out there training and becoming these full-fledged knights. So typically, though, these knights would, after they get their knighthood, right, they're old enough, they are given fiefs, which is a plot of land by a lord or a king in return for their protection, right? So you would go out and you would protect their land. You might collect taxes. You might do certain other jobs for them. Um, and all of that was kind of part of the code of chivalry. So this was a kind of complex set of ideals, and typically it was serving not only the earthly lord, protecting them, but you're also you're holding the ideals and spreading the ideals of the heavenly Lord as well. So kind of spreading the idea of Christianity, and holding that to a higher standard. And then also, in addition to protecting the earthly lord and protecting the idea of the heavenly lord, but also protecting your ladies as well, right? um, Now, one thing that a knight also had to do was protect everybody beneath him. So that typically the peasants and the serfs, it was their job. It was their job to protect the territory. And if you had invaders come in, you would have to protect the territory from those invaders. However, it doesn't mean that they had to treat the peasants and the serfs uh, well. So they typically only treated the upper class generally with respect. A lot of times the knights were actually kind of jerks when it came to the peasants and the serfs. So knights typically, when it came to talking about their code of chivalry, right, kind of bled into literature a little bit later on. I mean, or even earlier on, you kind of got these songs and poetry and these oral traditions that stemmed from the stories of the knights' heroic deeds and their love, and that's typically what you heard. So later on, when we started creating a lot more literature, you would start to see this a lot more, where it would really kind of focus on the bravery of knights and the love of knights, and kind of created this artificial image. And that's really what it is. So we have a lot of poems and songs that are written about knighthood and these knights, and these specific people that actually created and sang these songs were known as troubadours. So troubadours would go out and they would travel around and they would sing their songs, and uh, try to grab a lady's attention by singing her songs of knights and chivalrous acts. Uh, and generally, it was about knights and their joys of love, their joys and sorrows of love, and their heroic deeds as well. This generally created this, like I said, artificial image of knights. And we, even to this day, we still think that knights are brave and courageous and kind and loving and just these great guys. But in all reality, they were often far from that. They were generally quite brutal. They were dangerous, selfish. Um, those were the knights. All right, so we're actually going to move into the next part and talk about the development of the church in medieval Europe.